The Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index ETF, known as VYM, is a well-diversified ETF expected to yield somewhere of around 3.2% this year. Now, this ETF has a long-standing track record of solid capital appreciation and consistent quarterly paid dividends that have also been increasing over time. But what if I told you there was something that most long-term dividend investors are missing when it comes to this low-cost, high-quality Vanguard ETF? Well, stay tuned until the end of this video because we are going to do a deep dive into the VYM ETF, and I'm also going to expose what I think might make this ETF a massive buying opportunity for investors out there chasing growing dividends and, of course, capital appreciation on top of that. We are going to go through all this and more right after you please drop a like in this video and subscribe for more high quality content like this. So first, let's do a little bit of an overview on the VYM ETF and talk about what it is. So VYM, or Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, is an exchange-traded fund launched and managed by the Vanguard Group. This ETF invests in public equity markets of the United States. The fund invests in stocks of companies operating across diversified sectors. The fund invests in growth and value stocks of companies across diversified market capitalization. The ETF invests in dividend-paying stocks of companies. And the fund seeks to track the performance of the FTSE High Dividend Yield Index. Now, VYM is a well-diversified portfolio, with 19.18% being financials, 15.05% being consumer defensive, healthcare being 14%, industrials at 11%, energy at almost 11%, technology at 8.5%, utilities at 7%, consumer cyclical at 6.9%, communication at 3.8%, base material at 2%, and a tiny bit of real estate. Now, VYM is made up of 469 different companies, which means obviously the fund is very well diversified. So for the investors out there that want a small piece of a lot of different high-quality dividend-paying companies, VYM could be a good option. VYM's top 10 holdings are very familiar. We have ExxonMobil at the top, we have Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, Procter & Gamble, Chevron, the Home Depot, Merck, abbvie, Pepsi, and Coca-Cola. Now, these top 10 holdings have a long-standing history of decent performance overall, and of course a history of paying dividends consistently and raising them over time. Now, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF is up 102% as far as the ETF's price on the max chart. So this ETF does have a longer track record and more history to look back on than some of the other popular dividend-paying ETFs out there, which might give you some more information when it comes to if or if not you should invest into it. Now, another great thing that VYM offers is the very cheap expense ratio. VYM offers a 0.06% expense ratio, which is definitely reasonable and on the lower end, especially for a high quality ETF like this. Now, as far as VYM's dividends, we have a trailing 12-month dividend yield of 3.2%. So honestly, a decent starting dividend yield, especially because the price of VYM, along with the rest of the market, has been beat up as of recently. Now, this ETF is a quarterly paying ETF. And as you can see, since the fund's inception, the dividends have fluctuated, but overall, they have been moving up over time consistently. For some reference, back in 2006, VYM was offering around 18 cents per quarter per share. And just as of March, the last dividend declared was up to 72 cents per quarter. So for the investors out there that take dividend growth very seriously, VYM definitely crosses that off. But the bigger question is maybe, how has the Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF compared and performed against the S&P 500 over multiple time frames? If we're looking at total return, which is share price and dividends included, VYM year to date is down 4.57%. The S&P is up 8.34% year to date. If we look in the last year, VYM is actually down 2.37%, and the S&P is up 6.23%. On the 3-year time frame, this is where the S&P 500 and VYM are pretty much neck and neck. VYM is up 43.22% and the S&P is up 44.24%. And lastly, on the 5-year time frame, the S&P is up 64.67%, where VYM is only up 42.08%. 42.08% over the last 5 years is still not too shabby of a return, especially since it's offering investors a nice juicy dividend every single quarter. Now, if you've made it to this far into the video, this is the part about VYM that I don't think a lot of dividend investors realize. We touched on VYM's dividend growth a little bit earlier, and we also talked about how we do have a good amount of historical data to go off of. So VYM's dividend growth rate, so how fast the dividend has grown over the last 3 years, has been 4.88%. So to be honest, that's not all that great of a dividend growth rate on the 3-year time frame, which shows that because of VYM's holdings and or for whatever reason, the dividend growth has slowed down as of recently. But if we zoom out on the 5-year growth rate, we're up to 6.33%, which is getting up there. If you look at the 10-year dividend growth rate, VYM is at 8.83%. Now this is more along the lines of what you'd expect from a fund that's built out like this. But what's interesting is that on the 20-year time frame for the dividend growth for VYM, the dividend growth rate is at 13.96%, which that is definitely a pretty good dividend growth rate. So what does this exactly mean for VYM and why is this important for investors to realize? Well, if you look historically at how VYM has performed and exactly how much in dividends is paid out every single year since inception, there's been some years where the dividend payouts have been higher and lower. But if we were to project and assume that VYM moving forward here is going to have a dividend growth rate of around 8.67%, which is somewhere in the average of what it's done so far, VYM is projected to pay $3.53 per share in 2023, $3.84 per share in 2024. In 2025, VYM could pay $4.17 per share. In 2026, VYM could pay $4.53. In 2027, VYM could pay $4.92 per share. 2028, $5.35. 2029, $5.81. And by 2030, VYM could be paying over $6.30 per share. Now zooming all the way out, and keep in mind, this is just a projection. If VYM can keep up with a dividend growth rate of 8.67%, which historically speaking, it should be able to, VYM could be paying out $8.11 per share by the year 2033. So of course, it's hard to know exactly how much the dividend growth rate is going to be for an ETF like this. But the good thing we have going for this model is the fact that we do have a lot of history when it comes to the VYM's dividend growth rate so far. So what this means for dividend growth investors is simple. If an investor was to buy into something like VYM today, the fund will likely continue to pay you long-term into the future. And if the annual dividend growth rate sticks to something around 8 to 9%, VYM could be paying out a massive dividend to shareholders that get into the fund early. But I want to hear what you guys think down below. Do you think VYM is going to be able to raise their dividend around 8 to 9% on a yearly basis from here on out? Or do you think VYM's dividend growth is going to slow down and that there's other dividend ETFs out there with faster dividend growth? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like in the video and subscribe for more. Thanks as always, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.